before the moon rises over the silent hills of Rojales. The land lies beneath a trembling hush. Only the wind remembers the ancient days when magic and faith clashed beneath the stars. They say that on St. John's night, if you listen closely, you'll hear a whisper from the earth. A sigh born of stone, a name fading in the mists of Cabeza Soler, La Enchanted.
Welcome to Saga TV.
We're glad to have you with us again as we dive into the world of mysterious stories.
Today, we present a new enigmatic tale. Perhaps a fairy tale, a saga, or a legend.
Or could this story, in the end, be based on true events?
That's exactly the question. What do you think?
Is what you're about to see reality or pure fantasy?
Feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comments below.
And if you enjoy our film, don't forget to like it.
And subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any future stories.
We hope you enjoy the film.
The first breath of dawn slid across the valley of Rojales. Yet atop the Cabeza Soler, the night still lingered. A thin veil of mist clung to the rocks as if the mountain itself held its breath. Through the pearly haze shimmered a structure that seemed older than time. The Emir's palace, arches as tall as the sky, jade-green walls drinking the early light. Here the Emir had lived for decades, a man of dignity, wealth, and an ancient lineage. His face bore the marks of years, yet his posture remained that of an unbroken ruler. He often stood upon the great terrace where the mountain winds carried whispers from distant lands. But this morning, a shadow burdened his gaze. Though his gardens flourished and his vaults overflowed, he felt his world tremble. The Christian reconquest pressed ever forward, and each new decree chipped away at the stones of his reign. He had no son, no heir. And without a descendant, whispered the fear in his chest, his name would crumble and vanish with the dust of history. A soft eastern breeze brushed against him, and the Emir closed his eyes. In the silence, he heard only the distant river and the faint clinking of bronze chains on the palace gates. Everything seemed calm, yet inside him something stirred. An ancient tightening unease. On this morning, his decision took root. A decision that would seal the fate of his family, his palace, and an innocent soul. The sun had barely slipped behind the mountains when the Emir's fortress became drenched in a dim amber glow. Torchlight flickered between the walls, casting long shadows that made the At this hour of twilight, when day and night blend for a heartbeat, the Emir set his dark. In the villages below the Cabeza Soler, a festival was being celebrated. Music, laughter, and lanterns filled the streets. Among the crowd was a young Christian woman, innocent, with a face soft as moonlight. She did not know she was being watched. The Emir's men observed her from the shadows. Silent as ghosts, they moved through the narrow streets waiting for her to be alone. When night finally swallowed the valley and the last lanterns died, fate reached out for her. A grip, a muffled cry, a sack thrown over her head, and silence consumed her. The journey up the mountain echoed only with the muted thundering of hooves. The young woman trembled, unable to scream, The mountain rose above her like a dark giant. Inside the fortress, she was dragged through long, cold corridors. Torches flickered as if fearing the shadow that followed them. Her heart pounded so violently it echoed through the stone. When the men cast her at the Emir's feet, he lifted his gaze. There was no anger, no greed, only a grim, unyielding determination. To him, she was not a person, she was a key. A final attempt to secure a future for his bloodline, no matter the cost. The hours inside the Emir's fortress fell heavy as wet stone. The corridors were quieter than usual, as if the stronghold itself held its breath. Behind the locked door of a secluded chamber lay the young Christian woman brought there by force. Almost a year had passed since her abduction, and now the moment had come. The moment the Emir had awaited and feared. Outside, under the dim glow of oil lamps, the Emir paced. His face remained still, but his hands betrayed him. Every sound from behind the door was both a promise and a threat. The fortress seemed to listen, as though it knew something irreversible was about to unfold. When the newborn finally cried, first soft, then stronger, the Emir stopped. A tremor ran through him, ancient as the stories of his people. He entered and saw the child, a girl, small, beautiful, bright like the first light of dawn, as innocent as the sacrifice it had required. The mother was weak, breathing shallow, barely present. A moment of silence followed. So deep it seemed time itself had ceased to flow. The Emir approached her. There was no anger in his gaze, only cold, relentless resolve. For he knew, if the child's Christian origin were discovered, his plan, his legacy, his name would be lost. The oil lamp flickered, a shadow detached itself from the wall. And when he left the room, only the child wept. That night, the Emir buried the truth beneath silence and stone. The birth of his daughter marked the end of one life, and the beginning of a curse that would one day consume the entire fortress. Zoraida grew up within silent walls and corridors where shadows seemed to guard unspoken truths. The Emir's fortress was her entire world, stone, wind, and the quiet that always followed every spark of laughter. Over the years, she became a young woman of calm, striking beauty, with eyes that seemed to hear what others could not. At times, she felt footsteps that belonged to no living soul, or whispers speaking names she had never learned. The Emir watched her with pride and a quiet unease. He knew her existence was the key to his legacy, yet also a doorway to a fate he could not decipher. People in the valley whispered. Some swore the wind shifted when Zoraida walked the ramparts. Others claimed the moon shone brighter when she looked directly at it. One night, as mist draped the fortress like a shroud, Zoraida stopped along the battlements. She felt a chill that did not belong to the air but to the earth itself. The walls seemed to pulse faintly, as though the fortress remembered something she had yet to learn. Without knowing it, each step she took stirred an ancient debt long unpaid. A secret buried beneath stone, blood, and silence. One that had already begun to awaken. In the late afternoon, as the warm wind swept across the dusty paths of the valley, Zoraida slipped quietly down the narrow trail leading from the mountain to the settlement. No jewelry, no veil, no gold, only a coarse linen dress and a cloth wrapped around her shoulders. No one could know who she was. The market was alive with voices, the clatter of clay jars and the scent of spices and warm bread. Zoraida stopped, overwhelmed by colors, sounds, and faces she had only ever seen from afar. For the first time, she felt like one of them, neither observed nor guarded. Then she saw him, a young merchant helping to gather a toppled basket of pomegranates. The red fruit rolled like small rubies across the ground, and when Zoraida bent down to pick one up, their eyes met. There was something in his calmness that felt strange and yet familiar. No suspicion, no fear, only a quiet recognition. She spoke no word, but she lingered longer than she should have, almost too long for a stranger. Before either could break the silence with meaning, someone called his name, Juan. When Zoraida passed his stall again, their eyes met once more, and now both knew they wished to see each other again. It was subtle, unremarkable, an arrangement without a date, without a word. Before the sun set, Zoraida made her way back. She slipped into her fine garments, looked at herself in the mirror, and still she appeared changed, as if a new thought had settled inside her. That night she lay awake in her bed, moonlight stretching across the room through the lattice window. The market faded, the voices, the merchants, the scents, but not his gaze. The more she tried to forget it, the clearer it stood before her. The young Christian, Juan. And though no sound filled the chamber, it was as if she still heard the question no one had spoken. When will we meet again? 17 summers had passed, and the small, silent bundle had become a young woman whose beauty made even the gray-haired soldiers at the gate pause for a heartbeat. Zoraida moved through the halls of the fortress like a shadow made of light. A figure no one dared to understand, and yet everyone watched. The Emir, however, felt the weight of the years settle in his bones like cold stone. The fear of loss gnawed stronger than any enemy. The land was no longer what it had been under his father. Borders shifted, alliances had become mere words on the wind, and the Christian kingdoms drew ever closer. He needed security, an heir, a future that would outlast him. So he decided to unite Zoraida with the son of a powerful ally, a man of noble birth, rich in land and influence, as ambitious as the Emir had once been. An alliance that promised peace and secured ownership. In honor of the upcoming union, a great celebration was to be held. For weeks, merchants and servants prepared the courtyard. Torches were reforged, silk-embroidered carpets cleaned. In the villages of the valley, people whispered about the celebration, said to be grander than any before. On the evening of the feast, the fortress glowed like a heart of fire above the valley. Riders ascended the dusty path to the summit, the air thick with the scent of spices. Musicians tuned their instruments, and guests' laughter mingled with the clinking of cups. Yet Zoraida stood apart. Among shimmering fabrics, golden goblets, and flickering lights, she seemed strangely misplaced, like someone who had awakened in the wrong tale. While the crowd cheered and the Emir announced the union of families with a firm voice, she felt neither joy nor honor, only a peculiar crackling inside her. A whisper, like a distant gust of wind demanding attention. That night, beneath heavy music and golden bowls, Zoraida sensed for the first time that her future would not be made of silk and titles, but of something far older than plans, names, and promises. Something that slept within the stone of the fortress and within her blood. Night had settled over the fortress like a heavy cloak. The last echoes of the celebration had faded, yet Zoraida could not sleep. In her chamber, only a single oil lamp burned, its flickering light sliding across stone and fabric. Silently, she allowed her maid to enter, the one who was more friend than servant. Between them, words were scarcely needed. Zoraida's gaze alone made clear that this was no ordinary request. She spoke of the announced marriage, of a man whose name carried weight but no feeling, of a future placed upon her like a chuj garment. And then she spoke the name that must not be spoken aloud: Juan. The maid listened without interruption. When Zoraida asked her to go down into the valley and find the young Christian, she understood at once that silence was a matter of life and death. Before dawn, she left the fortress, discreet as a shadow among walls and paths. The market lay asleep when she found Juan. He recognized her even before she spoke. And when he heard the message, something changed in his eyes. Not fear, not doubt, but resolve. That very night, it would happen. When darkness was at its deepest and even the dogs in the valley had fallen silent, Zoraida slipped out of the fortress. No gold, no jewels, only what was necessary. By the old olive tree, Juan was already waiting, his horse restless as if sensing danger. They looked at each other for only a moment. It was enough. Without looking back, they rode away, far from walls, promises, and names. The path led downward through fields and stone, past olive groves, ever toward the river where the fog thickened and the night swallowed everything. And high above, in the dark stone of the fortress, something began to stir. Something that would not leave this step unanswered. Dawn was still far away when a guard noticed the emptiness. A side door of the fortress stood open, the night wind moving through the corridor. And suddenly the certainty arose that something was missing. Without raising an alarm, without shouting, driven only by growing dread, the guard hurried to the Emir's chambers. At the same hour, Zoraida and Juan reached the river. The Rio Segura lay still in the dimness of night, its surface veiled by drifting mist. Zoraida dismounted and sat at the river's edge. She immersed her feet in the cold water, letting the current wash over her skin as if to assure herself that she was still free. There in the half-light, she confessed her love to Juan, not in hurried words, but with a calm born of deep certainty. Juan listened, and in his silence lived the same resolve. Exhausted, they sat side by side. The horse stood behind them, restless, pawing at the ground, as though sensing that this peace was deceptive. In the fortress, the news struck the Emir like a blow. He was told that his daughter had fled, not alone, but with a Christian. In that moment, all restraint vanished. The Emir ordered his fastest horse to be saddled, seized his sword, and rode into the night, driven by fury, shame, and the feeling of a betrayal sharper than any blade. He found them by the river. With his sword drawn, he rushed at Juan, determined to kill the Christian and erase the dishonor. But Juan reacted faster. He drew his own blade, met the attack, and in a short, fierce struggle, the Emir was mortally wounded. The old man fell to the ground, dark blood staining the dust, his breath coming in ragged gasps.
By stone and by blood, by all that was left to me. Before this night ends, my castle shall sink into the mountain, and with it, my daughter. Do not believe, Christian, that your victory is the end.
Release her. The curse ends with you.
No, it begins with you. Hear my condition now, for without it there can be no redemption.
Speak.
If you succeed, tomorrow evening, in carrying my daughter from the summit of this mountain down to the river, without setting her down even once, then the curse shall be broken. The castle, its people, everything that has sunk will return.
And if I fail?
Then you will die. You will be found lifeless, marked by the curse. Your tongue hanging from your mouth a warning to all who defy fate. And know this, after this single attempt, only one possibility remains.
What possibility?
Every 100 years, on the night of June 24th, a human may walk the same path, bear the same burden, and perform the same ritual to free Zoraida.
Con esas palabras, el Emir murió.
As the sun sank behind the hills and the mountain lay wrapped in violet dusk, Juan returned. Alone. No call Soprov him, no sign from the castle. Only the wind brushing over bare stone, as if holding its breath. Zoraida was already waiting. She stood where the walls had once risen pale in the moonlight, still as a thought. No shadow fell from her. When Juan reached her, she spoke no word. She did not need to. He lifted her into his arms, and the moment her weight rested upon him, the mountain answered softly, like a beast awakening. The path to the river was long, 6 kilometers of stone, roots, and darkness. No sooner had Juan left the first slopes behind than the olive grove came alive. Twisted branches bent against all natural order and clawed at him. Wood cracked like bone. Zoraida clung to him as Juan drew his sword and cut the branches down one by one. For every branch severed, another seemed to grow. Greedy, grasping. Only when he left the grove did the mountain release him. Only for a moment. From the darkness they crawled, giant spiders, their bodies gleaming like black stone, legs long and soundless. Webs stretched between the rocks. Juan shifted Zoraida onto his shoulder, felt her grow heavier, and faced the first beast. The blade cut through chitin, venom splashed onto the ground. The creature collapsed. Another followed, then another. But Juan fought on, bleeding, gasping, until the path lay open again. Lower down, near a ravine, the troll rose, a creature of earth and stone, slow yet unstoppable. Each step shook the ground. Juan knew he could not flee. He lowered his head, shouted, and charged. The fight was brief and brutal. When the troll fell, Juan stood for a moment, swaying, and felt Zoraida grow heavier once more. The final obstacle waited in the mist, not flesh but voices, whispering, enticing. Shadows of men who had walked this path before him. They offered rest, peace, release. Juan clenched his teeth and pressed on. Then he reached the river. The water lay before him calm, impossibly close. Yet with every step, Zoraida became heavier, as if the mountain itself were pulling her back. His knees gave way. He fell. Once more he tried to rise, in vain. Zoraida's foot touched the ground. A gust of wind swept through the valley. Zoraida slipped from his arms, her body dissolving like mist at dawn. Silently, her spirit rose. Back to the mountain, back to the place to which she was bound. Juan remained where he lay. When morning came, they found him motionless at the river's edge, his eyes open, his tongue hanging from his mouth, marked by the curse he had failed to overcome. And high above, upon the silent hill, Zoraida continued to wait until the next 100th year, until the next night of June 24th.
Thank you for watching this film all the way to the end.
You might be wondering now, is this story based on a saga, a legend, or is it purely fictional?
The answer is yes, it is a legend, an old tradition that truly exists here in Rojales.
It tells of an Emir who abducted a Christian woman, and of his daughter Zoraida, who was meant to be married against her will.
Of the Emir's death, and of a curse that bound castle, mountain, and daughter together.
Only one hope remained, to carry Zoraida to the Rio Segura, without setting her down even once.
Along the way, one had to fight against the mountain, against dark forces, and against monsters.
But with every step, Zoraida grew heavier, too heavy to be carried all the way to the river.
And so it is said that Zoraida still waits, within the mountain Cabezo Soler near Rojales, waiting for her redemption.
Some versions say she can be freed every year on the night of June 24th. Others claim this is only possible once every 100 years.
And Roman, wouldn't you like to try to free the beautiful princess?
Honestly, that sounds far too dangerous, with swords and monsters. Besides, I already have a woman I love.
Then the legend lives on.
And continues to wait for the next one who dares to try.
Thank you for watching, and goodbye.